I found out I was pregnant in March. I found out I was being watched on the first cold morning of October. The Salvetter estate sits on a hill above Lake Como the way a hawk sits on a wire, high, patient, and not pretending it is anything other than what it is. I had walked up the drive that morning in shoes I had bought at a second-hand stall in Gallarat, through iron gates that did not move until I stood in front of them. Past a fountain that burbled the way fountains do for people who believe the world is listening. I had a printed contract in my bag, 2 changes of clothes in a plastic bag, and a copy of my mother's prayer card pressed against the bottom of my stomach like a promise. I had not told anyone about the baby. I have a rule about telling people things. The rule is, don't. People find out when they find out. Mothers who tell their children the truth about Santa Claus tend to raise children who never trust the dark. I was raised by my grandmother, who told me the truth about everything, and I learned very young that some truths are not gifts. They are teeth. The contract said I would live in. 2 words that meant I would not be allowed to leave. I would not have a key of my own. I would eat what they ate, sleep where they told me, walk the floors of a house that belonged to a man whose name I had only ever heard whispered on the news. And I would do this work for less money than a city lawyer paid his secretary to file 1 folder. I took it because it had a room, a real room, with a door that closed from the inside. I am going to be honest about something now, because I am writing this down for whoever finds it. I had been sleeping in my car for the last week of September. I had parked it in the lot behind the Esselunga in Como and washed my face at the bathroom sink the way the women with children do. I was 8 months along. I had stopped showing it as showing weeks ago. I was showing it as hiding now. I wore 3 layers in October because it was easier than answering questions. The grandmother is gone. The flat above her shop in Gallarat belongs to a cousin who asked no questions, but also asked me not to come back. The cousin is a good man. He is a man who is tired. I needed a room, and I needed a door, and I did not need anybody to know my name. The contract gave me that. The contract did not give me a guarantee that I would not be seen. The first morning, I walked into the kitchen at 5. The stove was old, an aga, the kind that heats the whole room if you stand near enough to it. I set water on. I took inventory of the pantry: flour, 3 types of polenta, anchovies in oil, exactly 1 lemon, and a tin of cocoa that had been pushed to the back of the shelf, like a man pushing a memory into a corner. I made a list. I did not write the list down, I wrote it in my head. I cut bread. I turned on the radio to a station that played church music in the mornings, very quiet, because this house had a particular feeling about noise, as if it had been trained somehow, like a dog. At 5:45, the head of house, a man named Oscar Bellini, came in. Oscar is a man who has lived in this house since before I was born and has opinions about every part of it. He has a face like a folded paper napkin and a habit of sighing in exactly the same spot of the kitchen, in front of the aga, as if the stove were a priest he was not quite ready to confess to. He looked at me, he looked at the bread, he looked at the bread again. "Madonna," he said. He said Madonna like other men say good morning. He picked up a slice between 2 fingers, he ate it. He closed his eyes. He said, "Who taught you to cut bread like this?" Not a question, an accusation of some kind. He had a face that suggested he was being personally attacked by my bread. "My grandmother," he sighed. "Of course." He set the bread down. He did not say what was wrong with my grandmother's bread. He did not have to. He had eaten half of it. Then he told me the rule of the house. "The boss is back tonight. You will not meet him tonight. The boss meets staff when the boss chooses. Until he chooses, you are furniture." "Do you hear me, furniture?" I heard him. I worked through the day. I cleaned the upstairs hall. I cleaned a guest bathroom that somebody had used like an open field. I cleaned it and did not think about anything. This is the trick I have, not thinking. I have known how to not think since I was 11 years old, and the grandmother died, and I had to walk to school without her shoes and pretend I was not walking in someone else's grief. The trick works, until it doesn't. At 6 in the evening, I was carrying a basket of fresh linen through the upstairs hall. The whole upstairs smelled of beeswax and old leather and money. I heard a door open downstairs. I heard, in the way you hear a thing that has weight, a single voice say something low and another voice answer very quickly. Then a silence that fell like a stone. He came up the stairs. He was not what I had expected. He was not what the news makes men like him. He was tall, but not in the way tall men are usually tall. He was tall in the shoulders. He had hands that were not clean. He had on a black coat that had been worn in weather. He had stopped on the stairs, 2 steps from the top, and he was looking at me with the particular blankness of a man who is used to looking at things and having them not be there. He looked at me like I was the wreath on the door. Then the linen basket shifted in my arms. I had stacked it badly. The top sheet folded down into my face, and a small glass jar of polish I had set sideways rolled off the pile. It fell 3 steps, hit the marble, and broke. It was a small jar of beeswax polish. It was not dramatic. It did not threaten anyone's life. It was a small brown jar, and it broke the way small jars break, quietly, except for the sound. He was 2 steps below the broken jar. He was 2 steps below me. A drop of polish hit the side of his shoe. I should have apologized. I should have knelt. I should have done what women in this house do when they break something near a man like him. Fold small, vanish, become invisible. This is what I had been told to do by every article I had ever read about men like him. This is what my grandmother would have told me to do if she were alive. Make yourself nothing when he is near, Alina. Nothing does not get hurt. What I did instead was this. I climbed down the 2 steps. I picked up the largest piece of the broken jar, which still had some polish in it. I wiped the polish off his shoe with the hem of my apron. And I said, careful, not I'm so sorry. Not forgive me, I said careful, because the broken glass was at his foot, because a man in this house could bleed out on marble and have someone find him in the morning. Because I had cleaned enough kitchens to know that broken jars cut shoes, and men who wear good shoes do not always notice. He did not step back. He looked down at my hand on his shoe. He looked up at my face. He did not speak. Gatina, he said. It was the first word he said to me. Not hello, not what is your name, Gatina, little cat. He said it the way a man says a thing that is his, the way a man says this. He said it without warmth. He said it without cruelty. He said it in the tone a man uses for a key or a paperweight or a cologne he has worn every day for 20 years. I stood up. The linen basket was at my feet. I did not apologize. He walked past me. He did not say good night to me. He did not acknowledge that I was a woman in his hallway. He did not look back. But in my pocket, on the way down the stairs, I found a folded piece of paper that Oscar had slipped under my door 2 days before. It was a photocopy of my own personnel file. On the front of it, in his handwriting, small, careful, suspicious, was circled a single date, March 14, the date the baby had been conceived, the date my mother died. The date someone else died in his house, 13 years ago, though I had not known that yet. I folded the paper into my apron. I went back to the kitchen. The aga was still warm. The bread was gone. Gatina uses, 1 motif lemons beeswax, introduced subconsciously with the lemon and beeswax. Why her? Careful, she protects him when she should be afraid. Chapter Identity Closers. Line, the bread was gone. I learned the house by sound before I learned it by sight. This is the trick of the in-between kind of servant, not the lady's maid who is permitted to ask questions, but the one who is permitted only to know the room, the dust in it, the temperature of it. And what kind of cleaning fluid makes the wood sing instead of complain. I learned which floorboard in the upstairs hall creaked at 3 in the morning. I learned that the radiator in the second bathroom ticks like a clock that has forgotten how to count. I learned that the door to his study, when it is locked, makes a small, honest click, and when it is unlocked, it does not make any sound at all. I learned Oscar. He is the man who forgot he had been a boy. He is 57. He has a narrow face, a kind of sideways dignity that does not belong to this century, and a hairline that retreats like a man retreating from a fight he knows he has lost. He has lived in this house for 31 years. He was hired as a footman when he was 26. He never left. He does not talk about why he never left, because that would be admitting he had something to lose. His subplot, and I have come to understand that this is the language of houses like this one. Every servant has a subplot. A hidden nerve the house is too polite to press is that he is in love with a woman named Maria, who runs the household accounts and who has been refusing him for 19 years. He brings her coffee at 11 a.m. every morning with the same undelivered promise on his face. She takes the coffee. She does not say thank you. She has not said thank you in 19 years. He has not stopped bringing it. He also, for reasons I have not yet decoded, has been on the same diet for 14 years. He keeps a notebook of what he eats. The notebook is titled Plan B. He weighs himself on Tuesdays. He has been weighing himself on Tuesdays since long before I arrived. The first morning I worked for him, the second morning I was in the house, he came into the kitchen at 5:30 and watched me break 4 eggs into a copper bowl. He looked at the bowl the way a bishop looks at a chalice he has not been permitted to touch. He asked me how long I had been cooking. Long enough, he repeated, as if the words personally had offended him. He sighed the sigh, your grandmother's bread. Your mother's eggs. He leaned against the aga as if it were the only honest thing in the room. Where did you learn? Gallaret. Madonna, he said. As if Gallaret had personally wronged him by producing a granddaughter who could cook. There is a particular sound an Italian kitchen makes when a man is being raised in it. It is the sound of a woman who has stopped pretending she does not care what he thinks. I make a sound like that now in this kitchen. I did not mean to. I had decided on my first morning that I would not try, that I would do my work and not care. I was 4 days into not caring when Dante Salvator came down for breakfast. He came at 7. He came alone. He wore the same coat he had worn the night before, as if he had slept in it or had not. He stood in the kitchen doorway, and he did not look at me, and he said coffee. 1 word. He said it like an order to the room itself, as if the room had the coffee and should deliver it. I poured the coffee. He took the cup. He did not sit. He leaned against the counter 3 feet from me, and he closed his eyes. I was 8 months pregnant, leaning over the copper bowl, beating the eggs with a fork because the grandmother said a fork is more honest than a whisk. He was 3 feet from me. The kitchen smelled of eggs and parsley and citric acid from the lemon I had been zesting, and underneath it, faintly, the beeswax polish from the broken jar the night before. He opened his eyes. He looked at the lemon in my hand. You smell like a pantry, he said. I did not know what was meant by this. I did not know if it was a joke or if I had made some terrible mistake. I'm sorry, sir. Sir, he repeated. He almost smiled, almost did not. I do not have a pantry smell, do I? No, sir. Then stop apologizing. I am telling you what you smell like. He drank the coffee. You smell like a kitchen that someone has lived in. I did not understand him. I did not know if I was meant to. He set the cup down. The pantry smell stays. You do not change soap, do you hear? I heard. He left the kitchen. The cup was empty, but it was not clean. Oscar appeared from somewhere, from the linen closet perhaps, or from wherever secret Italians appear when a boss has left a room. He picked up the cup. He looked at the empty interior with the polite offense of a man who has been betrayed by a beautiful object. He liked the coffee, Oscar said. He did not say that. He drank it. Oscar set the cup down. He sighed. He said, Madonna, none of them ever say it. He looked at me sideways. Don't let him see you pregnant. He doesn't like pregnant things. I went cold. Why? I said. Because. Oscar tucked the cup under his arm like a small animal. Because when he was 15, there was a woman in this house who was pregnant, and he watched her bleed out on the kitchen floor, and after that he cannot. Oscar paused. He looked at the aga. It isn't something he speaks about. It is something he does. He removes anything that reminds him, including furniture. He walked toward the door. He turned. Including furniture, Alina. That night, the heating system in his mother's upstairs room burst at 3 a.m. I had been asleep in the staff wing. I woke to the sound of pipes. I went up. The radiator had split. The whole east wing was flooding. I ran to the linen closet. I grabbed every towel on the shelf. I was on my knees on the marble floor of his mother's bedroom, sopping water with the grandmother's clean towels. My hands smelling of beeswax and laundry detergent, and the lemon I had zested at 5 o'clock the day before. The water was so cold, my hands went numb. I worked until I could not. I remember coming back to myself, the way you come back to a song on the radio you had been humming without noticing, sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall, unable to lift my arms. I felt the baby shift inside me. I felt a small pressure in my chest that was not the baby's. I had not eaten. I had not drunk. I had been on my feet since 4. I do not know how long I sat there. I do not know who found me. I know that when I woke again, I was in my own bed, with a hot water bottle at my feet, and Oscar was sitting on the floor beside me, eating a slice of my own bread from the day before. "He carried you," Oscar said. "Don't say I told you that." I did not say. I lay in the dark and listened to the house listen to me. Gatina uses one motif, lemon's beeswax. He notices the lemon. "Why her seated? You smell like a kitchen that someone has lived in." Comedy relief, Oscar with Mari unrequited plus bread moment. Chapter closer, the house listening. I learned that Dante Salvator had a brother because I was making bread. This is what kitchens are for. Kitchens are for finding out things that were not said to you. Kitchens are for overhearing the things men only say when they believe no woman is in the room. It was the 3rd week of October. I was on my knees in the pantry at 9 in the morning, taking inventory of preserves, when I heard him in the hall. He was speaking to a man whose voice I had not heard before, older, quieter, educated in a different country. They were speaking in Italian. I speak enough Italian to understand a funeral and a reprimand and a man who is asking for bread. I do not speak enough Italian to understand Mafia money, but I heard the name Tommaso. I heard it because the name Tommaso is a name you hear the way you hear a bell, not the bell itself, but the space it leaves in the air. Fratello, brother, Dove e grave Tommaso, where is Tommaso? I did not move, I did not breathe. I stayed on my knees in the pantry, my hands on a jar of quince preserves, and I understood something I had not been told to understand. This man, this Dante, this Gatina saying, lemon smelling. Careful listening man, had a brother he was looking for, and the brother was not here. I understood this the way I understand most things that turn out to be true, late, and without permission. That night, I was clearing the dinner service. Oscar was wiping the silver. Dante was at the head of the table, not speaking, drinking something amber and small. There were 2 other men at the table whom I had not seen before. One of them, a man with a mustache and beautiful hands, was a lieutenant whose name I had not learned. The other was a younger man, dark, watchful, with the look of someone who had been following Dante for a long time. I asked Oscar later quietly who they were. "Morty," Oscar said. He meant the mustache man. He meant the younger man was Marco De Luca, who Dante trusted to ride shotgun on long drives because he didn't talk. "Who is Tommaso?" I said. "I heard," Oscar looked at me. He looked at me the way a doctor looks at a child who has asked the question the parent warned them not to. He had a face like a folded paper napkin, and I have never seen him more afraid. "Elena," he said my name carefully. "Do not say that name in this house. Do not ask about it. Do not write it down. Do not think it so loud that the radiators hear you." I did not ask again. 3 days later, a man I did not recognize came to the back gate. He was older. He was carried, no, he was brought by 2 men whose faces I had never seen, and one of them was bleeding from his ear. They left him in the kitchen. They left him sitting in the wooden chair by the aga. He had a coat that had been in weather. He had a wound on his neck that had been dressed with a handkerchief that was not white. Dante came in. He crossed the kitchen in 3 steps. He lifted the man out of the chair by the front of his coat and held him against the wall so the man's feet were 2 inches off the marble. The man said nothing. He made a sound that was not a word. Dante said, in a voice I had not heard from him before, a voice that was not Sir and not Gatina, but a third voice that belonged to a third man I had not met. Where is he? Where is my brother? Where is Tommaso? The man said nothing. Dante set him down. He did not speak again. He walked to the sink. He washed his hands. He did not look at me. I was standing by the aga with a wooden spoon in my hand, and I had stopped breathing at some point during the last minute, and I did not start breathing again until he was done washing his hands. He dried his hands. He turned. He looked at me. Gattina, he said it the way he had said it on the stairs, like a key, like a paperweight, like a fact. Sir, the bread. I can's not now. He walked toward the door. Tomorrow. I did not understand what he meant. I did not know if tomorrow meant I was still employed, or if it meant something I was not permitted to know. I did not ask. I went back to my work. I peeled 4 potatoes very slowly. I cleaned the sink. I cleaned the stove. That night in the staff wing, I found a paper folded under my door. I had not had a paper under my door since the personnel file. This one was different. This one had a photograph. The photograph was of a young man. I would have said a boy. He had dark hair and the same shoulders as Dante and the same particular blankness around the eyes, except his blankness was not yet a man blankness. It was a boy blankness. It was a face that had not yet learned to make itself into a weapon. On the back of the photograph, in Oscar's careful handwriting, was a date, March 14, the same date. The date circled on the personnel file, the date my mother died, the date the baby had been conceived. I stared at the date until the photograph blurred. I did not understand yet. I would not understand until much later. I understood only that I was holding a picture of a boy who had died on the same night my mother had, and that I was in a house where this was not a coincidence the men in it were permitted to ignore. I folded the photograph into my apron. I went to the kitchen. The aga was warm. Comedy relief, not this chapter. Motif mentioned, pantry smell recurring. Gattina used it too. Why her seated again in the bread sequence. Slow mystery opening. Tommaso's death on March 14. I had been here 32 nights when Lorenzo Vitelli told me the rules. Lorenzo is the man who stands behind Dante's chair at meetings. He is the man who drives the car that takes the body bags out. He has a face like a knife that has been sharpened too many times. He came to me on a Sunday morning. Sunday is the only day the kitchen is allowed to be quiet, and he stood in the doorway, and he did not step inside the kitchen, and he did not sit. You, he said. Me, I said. You go to the chapel at 4, you walk, you take the road behind the north wall, you don't go inside. You stand outside the door for 10 minutes, you come back. You don't tell anyone I told you to do this. He paused. He had a small, very clean mouth. Especially not the boss. Lorenzo, don't. He stepped back from the doorframe. Don't say my name in this house either. I went. The chapel was not on the estate. It was outside the wall, behind a row of cypress trees that smelled of resin and old paper. There was a small iron door, a knocker shaped like a hand, and a placard in Latin I did not read. I stood outside the door for 10 minutes. I did not know why. I felt the baby shift. I felt my back ache. I felt the wind off the lake come through the cypress like a hand through long hair. When I came back inside the staff wing, Oscar was in my room. He was sitting on the floor beside my bed. He had a small wooden box in his lap. He was not crying, but he was very close to crying in the way that men in this house are close to crying. Which is to say, he was holding his hands a particular way, and his jaw was a particular way, and his eyes were a particular shade of red. What is this? I said. He opened the box. Inside the box was a rosary made of dark wood. Beside it was a photograph of a young man. Beside the photograph was a small piece of paper that had been folded and folded again until it was the size of a thumbnail. The paper smelled of perfume, not Italian perfume, something older, something with a base of rose and a top of something like sandalwood. This was hers, Oscar said. Your mother's. I sat down. How did you, the boss found out? Oscar said the words as if he was reporting the weather. I do not know how. He finds things out. He hired a man in Gallaret to find things out. The man found your mother. I cannot tell you what that felt like. I cannot tell you because I was not yet the kind of woman who would tell anyone, even herself, what that felt like. I sat on the floor of the staff wing beside Oscar Bellini, and I held the rosary in my hands, and the wood of it was warm and smelled of my mother, even though my mother had been dead for 9 months. "He is not kind," Oscar said almost gently. "He is something else, do not confuse the two." I did not. That night, in the upstairs hallway, on my way to clean the guest bathroom, I ran into Dante coming out of his study. I had not prepared for him. I had not done the careful nothing I had been doing every morning at 5. I had on a dress I had not worn before, a dress I had worn because I had no other clean clothes. It was my mother's dress. It smelled of the sandalwood perfume. It had a collar that did not quite fit because my mother had been a smaller woman than me. He stopped. He looked at me. He looked at the dress. He looked at the perfume. He did not say Gattina. He did not say sir. He did not say anything for 10 seconds. The hallway smelled of beeswax and sandalwood and old money, and the baby was making his presence known in a particular way that I had begun to recognize as he's listening too. It was almost a kiss. I don't mean this in the way women mean it when they're being romantic about themselves. I mean, we were 3 feet apart in an upstairs hallway in October, and he had stopped, and he was looking at me, and I was looking at him, and I had stopped performing the nothing. For 10 seconds. He took a half step toward me. His hand came up. His fingers stopped an inch from the collar of the dress, from where the perfume on the dress was loudest. He did not touch me. He said very quietly, "This is hers," and I understood he meant the perfume and not the dress. "Yes." He lowered his hand. He walked past me. He did not apologize. He did not explain why he had almost touched me. He walked down the hallway with his shoulders in their particular shape that meant I am a man who has decided what to do, and I stood in the perfume of my dead mother and watched him go. I stood there for a long time. Gattina count 2 already used. Motif, beeswax plus sandalwood perfume scent motif expansion. Almost 1, the half step, the hand that did not touch. Comedy relief, Oscar with the rosary scene plus his overwhelming emotion plus Maria subplot thread, he mentions she. I made a mistake. I had not intended to make a mistake. I had intended to do my work and be furniture and not be seen. The mistake was this. I made a chocolate cake for the Sunday breakfast. I had not been asked to make a chocolate cake. No one in this house had been asked to make anything in years, except by themselves, for themselves, in the privacy of their own rooms. In the particular silence of men who had stopped being surprised by anything. I made the cake because I was 8 months pregnant and the baby had been awake all night, and I had been awake all night watching him be awake, and I wanted to make something that would not be a metaphor. Something that would simply be a chocolate cake. I used the grandmother's recipe, bitter chocolate on the bottom, rose cream in the middle. Caramelized shell on top, fragile, shatters at the slightest pressure. I told myself the cake was not a metaphor. The cake was not a metaphor. The cake was not a metaphor. I served it on a Sunday morning in the upstairs dining room, on the good plates. With a small silver fork that Oscar handed me with the face of a man, already preparing to apologize to God for what was about to happen. Dante came down at 7:45. He sat. Lorenzo stood. Marco stood. Oscar stood behind Dante's chair with a particular kind of upright posture that suggested he had been bracing for something for at least 20 minutes. Dante did not look at the cake. He cut a piece. He ate it. He closed his eyes the way he had closed his eyes when I had made the lemon coffee the first morning. He closed them in the kitchen, and I had been behind the counter, and he had been 3 feet from me. Now he closed them at the breakfast table with 3 other men watching and the kitchen staff standing at attention. He said nothing. Then he said, "Who made this?" "I did, sir." "Sir," he said it the way a man repeats a joke that had landed softly, as if barely amused by himself. He cut another piece. He did not look at it. He looked at me. "Gattina," he said. It was the second time he had called me that word in his own house. He said it the way a man says here is where you stand. It was warmer this time. warmer by a degree, like a key that has been in a coat pocket against a body. "Sir, stop calling me sir. I don't know what else to call you." He almost smiled. Men in this house did not smile often. They made a particular expression which is not a smile, but is an acknowledgement that something has happened that the mouth does not know how to do. The men leave. "Lorenzo, Marco, are you listening?" He said Marco in a tone I had not heard from him before, a tone I could not place. The younger man looked up. He had a face I trusted for reasons I could not defend. He was careful with knives, careful with all the small moves of a dangerous house. He stood first. He walked past me. He did not look at me either. Lorenzo lingered. Lorenzo looked at me and looked at the cake, and I could see, on his face, something I had not seen on a man's face in this house before. It was concern. Not pity, not calculated kindness, concern. As if he had suddenly realized what was being said between Dante and me was being said about me, and not about anything I had agreed to. "Lorenzo," Dante said, and Lorenzo was gone. Oscar stood very still, holding the salver at arm's length. He did not move. I could see by the way he held his jaw that he was bracing for something. He looked at me sideways, the way a man looks at a horse that has gotten out of its pen, wondering whether to approach it or run. "Leave us," Dante said to Oscar. Oscar set down the salver. He did not put it sideways. He did not lay it on its back the way a man who respects silver lays it on its back. He almost dropped it. He almost dropped it the way a man drops something when his hands are remembering a thing his mind has told them not to. He left. Now there were two of us in the breakfast room. There was a cake and a candle, and the smell of beeswax from the polishing I had done the night before, and underneath everything else, faintly, the lime peel and citric tang of boiled lemon from the curd I had made for his father, who had died in 2003, and was therefore, in this house, still being asked if he would like breakfast. Dante looked at my stomach. I had not been careful that morning. I had been thinking about the cake. The dress I had worn was the same dress I had worn the day the heating pipes burst. That is to say, it was a dress that did not hide the pregnancy, the way the apron had hidden the pregnancy in October. I had on Sunday after Mass not bothered to wear the apron. I had not thought, he saw. He did not say anything for a long time. Then he said, "Sit." I did not want to sit. Sitting meant acknowledging what my body had been doing for 23 weeks. Sitting meant being seen. I had been furniture for 32 days. Furniture did not have a body. Furniture did not have to go to a chapel at 4. Furniture did not have a child. Furniture did not have a brother who had died on the same night her mother had. Furniture was safe. I sat. He pulled out the chair beside mine. He did not sit on it. He stood behind me. He did not touch me. He stood close enough that I could smell beeswax and soap, and the cold, sweet, faintly chemical smell of the lemon cologne he wore every day. The smell had been around me for 32 days. I had not let my brain learn it. I had been pretending the smell was the kitchen and not a man. "March 14, he said. I did not say. "That was the date my brother died." I did not say. "That was the date my mother died." I did not say. "That is when this happened." He meant me. He meant my child. He did not say conceived. He did not look at my stomach. He looked at my face. I had spent my entire life not saying things. I had elevated silence into a craft. There are many people in this world, who believe that silence is the same as nothing. They are wrong. Silence is the most expensive thing a person can do. Silence costs more than any word. Silence takes years off your life, but there are moments when a silence is a wrong answer. This was one of them. I had been silent because I did not know where this was going. I had been silent because I was afraid. I had been silent because my mother had told me, before she died, that there are men in this world that a woman does not argue with. There are men in this world that a woman only nods. There are men in this world that a woman protects herself from by being a piece of furniture. "Yes," I said. The word came out smaller than I had meant it to. He sat back down. He pushed his plate toward me. He pushed the cake toward me. "Eat, Sir Dante." He said his name without looking at me, as if correcting a street sign. If you are to live in this house, you will not call me sir. I picked up the fork. I had to set the fork down twice because my hands were shaking. The cake was the grandmother's cake. The cake was bitter chocolate on the bottom, rose cream in the middle, a caramelized shell on top that shattered at the slightest pressure. He had given me his own plate, his own piece, and I had been too afraid to eat it. I ate. He watched me eat. He did not say more about the pregnancy. He did not ask who the father was. He did not ask why I had not told him. He read the personnel file in front of me. He did not read it privately. He did not pretend the file did not contain the things it contained. He read it as if it were a letter from a man he respected who had died. When he turned the page about my mother, he paused. He did not say sorry. He did not say I'm sorry for your loss. He said, your mother, March 14. Yes. March 14 is the day Marie Salvator died in this kitchen. I was a boy. I held her hand. I did not know what to do. I did not know what to say. I had run a kitchen for 32 days and had thought I was protecting a stranger. I had run a kitchen for 32 days because it was the only honest work I had ever found. And it had brought me to a man whose mother had bled out on this floor on the night. My mother died in a hospice bed in Gallaret. And the child I was carrying had been conceived on the night both those women had stopped. He folded the file. He looked at me. You have no family. No, you have no money. No, you have no one in the city who knows your name. No, he set his hand on the file. He did not touch me. He did not touch my hand. Then we will have to make one. I did not know what he meant. I did not know if he meant a family. I did not know if he meant a name. I did not know if he meant a place in this house, or a place in his life, or a place in a country where women who are 8 months pregnant and alone are permitted to be alive. He stood. He left the room. I sat at the breakfast table alone. I did not follow him. I did not look at the photograph of the boy. I did not look at March 14. I did not think about the cake. I did not think about what we meant. I did not move until I had eaten the entire piece of cake, because I had not eaten in 19 hours, and because the grandmother had taught me to finish what was on my plate. I stood. I cleaned the dishes. I cleaned the silver. I walked into the hall. Marco was in the hall. He had his back to me. He was on the telephone. He was speaking in Russian. He was speaking quietly. I am not sure how much of it I heard. I heard the word chiesa, church. I heard the word demani, tomorrow. I heard the word lay, her. I stood very still. He put the phone away. He turned. He saw me. Gatina. He said my name in his tone, the private mocking he used when he thought I was not in earshot. You look pale. Eat something. He smiled. He walked past me. His shoulders were not in their usual shape. His shoulders were in the shape they are when a man has finished doing what he came to do. I went back to the staff wing. I did not sleep that night. The chapel door had a knocker shaped like a hand. I had been coming to this chapel for 41 days. I stood outside the door. I did not go in. I did not know what I was waiting for. I did not know if Lorenzo had been told to send me here by Dante, or by Oscar, or by his own strange conscience. The wind off the lake came through the cypress trees the way it always does, like a hand through long hair. The cypress smelled of resin and old paper and the particular kind of cold that belongs to cemeteries in October. I had walked the road behind the north wall. I had stood at the door for 10 minutes. I had been about to turn around and go back. The hand on the door moved. I saw it first as a shadow, the shadow of a hand opening from the inside. Then the door opened. Inside the chapel was dark. Inside the chapel was a man. He was not old. He was not young. He had the particular face that belongs to a man who has decided he does not want to be here but cannot quite stop himself from being here. He had a pistol. He did not raise it. He held it the way a man holds a thing he is finding out he cannot use. He was looking at my stomach. You're her, he said. You're the one in the file. I did not say anything. You're the one Salvator is hiding. He said Salvator the way an Italian says the boss. With a small b he was Russian. He was from a Bratva family. I had spent my entire life on the western shore of the lake, and I knew what Bratva men smell like machine oil and cheap soap, and the particular cologne of a man who has been outside in the cold for A long time. Get in the car. No, I'm not asking. I know. I am going to tell you what happened next, and I am going to be honest about it because I have decided to write this down for whoever finds it. And I want whoever finds it to know that I did not run. I did not run because the baby was due in 3 weeks. I did not run because I had nowhere to run to. I did not run because I had spent 32 nights in this house being furniture and being brushed past by men with pistols, and I had decided, standing at that door with my hands on my stomach, that I was no longer furniture. I did not run because I knew that if I ran, my child would be born in a ditch in October. I said, I am not getting in the car. He almost laughed. He did not. He raised the pistol. I did not move. I said very quietly, very carefully, the way a woman says careful to a man on stairs who is in danger. I said, if you shoot me, my child dies. You do not want my child to die. You are not here for a child. He looked at me. Where did you learn to talk like that? My mother. He lowered the pistol. He stepped back from the door. He said, Signora. I am sorry for this. He walked away. He walked down the cypress path. He was carried back by 2 men who had been waiting at the bottom of the hill. I could see the dark shapes of their coats. I stood at the door of the chapel, and my legs did not hold me. I sat down on the cold stone step. I sat on the step my mother had not been able to climb because the labor had taken too long, and the ambulance had been late, and the hospice had been far. Dante came down the cypress path before I could stand. He came alone. He had a coat on. He did not have a pistol. He walked up the steps. He stood above me. He did not ask if I was hurt. He had seen the man leave. He offered me his hand. I took it. I could not stand without it. He held my hand until I was standing. He did not let go for an unnecessary second. He let go when I had my balance. We go back inside, he said. Whose man was that? The Russian. Why didn't he take me? Because, he looked at my stomach. Because you spoke to him. I did not understand. I did not know what I had done. I had not fought. I had not screamed. I had said what I had said to Dante Salvator on the stairs 3 months before, while a jar of polish was broken at his foot. I had said careful. I had said it again. I had said it to a different man, in a different context, and it had held the same way it had held on the stairs. It had been the only true thing I knew. We walked back. He did not let go of my hand. He did not hold it. He did not let it go. He let my fingers rest in his palm in a way that was not holding but was also not letting go. In the car, on the way down, he did not speak for 8 minutes. Lorenzo was driving. Marco was in the back seat. Marco did not look at me once. I knew why. I had heard him on the telephone. I had heard Chiesa. I had heard Domani. I had heard Lei. Marco had given the Russian my Sunday. Dante was watching the road. He was watching the road the way a man watches a road he has used as a grave. Gattina, he said. Yes, the lemon curd. What about it? Tomorrow, he did not look at me. You will make me a tart, not for the staff, for me, and then you will sit with me, and I will look at the file. And you will tell me what you have been hiding for 41 days, and I will not kill you. The car was silent. Marco, Dante said, pull over. Marco did not move for a moment. His hands were on the wheel. He was gripping the wheel in a way that I had not seen him grip anything in this house. Marco pulled over. Dante got out of the car. He stood on the road. He looked at Marco through the open door. Marco looked at him. Marco's face was not the face of a man who was being dismissed. His face was the face of a man who had been caught. Dante said, "Get out." Marco got out. Lorenzo and I sat in the car. We listened to 2 men speak on a road above Lake Como in October. They spoke in Italian. They spoke about things I did not fully understand. Marco raised his voice once. Dante raised his voice not at all. Dante let Marco back in the car. Marco sat. His face was paler than it had been. His hands were shaking. Dante sat back. He did not speak for the rest of the drive. When we got back to the house, Oscar was standing at the kitchen door. He had a face I had not seen. He had a face I would never see again on a face that was not his own, which is to say, he had been crying. He had been crying in the way men in this house cry, which is to say he had stopped. "Elena," he said, Madonna, he hugged me. I had not been hugged since I was 6 years old. I leaned into him. I felt the baby kick. I felt the beeswax smell of the kitchen. I felt the lemon peel and citric acid of the curd in the fridge. Dante stood in the doorway and watched us. He said, "I will find Marco's people. They did not come alone." Marco did not bring them alone. Lorenzo, go with him, find them. Then he said to me, "Gattina, Wednesday, the tart." He walked into the hall. I stood in Oscar's arms for a moment. Then I went back to the kitchen. I sat at the table. I put my hands on my stomach. I did not cry. I did not cry because I had been raised by a grandmother who taught me that women who cry in dangerous kitchens are women who die in dangerous kitchens. I sat at the table with my hands on my stomach, and I thought about Marco's shoulders, and about the chapel, and about the Russian, and about careful, and about the broken jar on the stairs. Gattina uses 3 her referenced explicitly, because you spoke to him. Almost 2, hand not let go, comedy relief, Oscar hug. Slow mystery deepens, Marco's betrayal suspected but not confirmed. Chapter ends, she thinks control passes. The next morning I went to the chapel again. I had been told not to. Lorenzo had told me. Marco had been removed from the chapel rotation. Lorenzo had been made responsible for my Sunday walks alone. I went anyway. I went because I had decided, in the car the day before, that I was no longer furniture. I went because I had stood at the door of the chapel 3 times already in this pregnancy, and I had not gone in, and I had been thinking, very quietly, that perhaps the reason I had not gone in was because the chapel was not for me. The chapel was for me, Mother. The chapel was the place I had been avoiding because I was afraid, and because avoidance is the way women like me have of surviving. I walked up the road behind the north wall. The cypress smelled of resin. The wind smelled of the lake. The hand-shaped knocker was cold. The door was already open. Inside the chapel was a man I had not seen before. He was sitting in the 3rd pew. He was not praying. He was holding a telephone. He was reading something on a paper. He did not look up. I sat in the 2nd pew. I did not look at him. I closed my eyes. I sat the way my mother had taught me to sit in a chapel. Still, hands folded, breathing through the nose, not looking up unless told to. I knelt when the kneeling came. I stood when the standing came. I did not think. When I came out, the man was gone. The pew was empty. On the pew where he had been sitting was a folded piece of paper. On the paper was a single date, 14 Marzo, Domani, lay, tomorrow, her. I had been told not to lie in this house. I had been told not to lie in this house by Oscar the 2nd morning I worked when he had said, "Elena, do not lie to the boss. He finds things out. He finds out by lying himself." He had said this without irony. He had said this as if he were teaching me about fire. I did not lie. I brought the paper to the kitchen. I set it on the counter. Oscar was sitting on his stool with his notebook open. He had a slice of bread in front of him that he was not eating. He was looking at the notebook. He looked up when I set the paper down. He read it. He did not say anything for a long time. "Madonna," he said. "Madonna mia." He said it twice. He closed the notebook. He looked at me. "Elena," he said. "I am going to tell you something I have not been told to tell you. The boss does not like pregnant things. The boss does not like pregnant people. He had a brother who died in this house on March 14, 13 years ago. Yes, that brother was not his blood brother. I did not understand. That brother was his best friend. That brother had a wife. That wife is now the woman who runs the Bratva network on the Eastern Lake. That woman is the one who sent the Russian yesterday." I sat down. The boss, Dante, he fell in love with his best friend's wife. He did not touch her. He did not say it. But everyone knew. And on March 14, 13 years ago, his best friend came to this house. He was 19. He had a pistol. He shot himself in the chest in the upstairs bath. I did not move. He bled out on the floor while his wife waited in the kitchen. She was 7 months pregnant with their daughter. She lost the daughter that night. She has been trying to kill Dante since. Oscar closed the notebook. She has been trying to kill every woman Dante has ever loved. You are the only one she has found him willing to hide. I did not speak for a long time. I looked at the bread in front of Oscar. I looked at his notebook. I looked at the bread that he did not eat. Dante loves your mother, Oscar said. He loved her before you came. He loved her perfume. He loved the way she died. He loved the fact that she did what was necessary. He loved the fact that she did not ask. Oscar, Elena, he doesn't know me. He knows a file. He knows a date. He does not know my face, Oscar said. He knows your face. He has known your face since the night the pipe burst. He carried you to bed. He did not let anyone else touch you. He sat with you until you were warm. He did not send a doctor. I did not know what to say. I did not know what to do. I had spent 32 days being furniture and being brushed past by men with pistols. I had stood at the door of a chapel. I had said careful to a man with a gun. I had brought a paper to the kitchen. I had been brought into a story I had not known I was in. That night, after dinner, Marco was gone. He had been removed from the house. Dante had done this quietly. He had not explained. He had not told me. I had found out because Lorenzo had carried Marco's coat out at 6 in the evening. Marco had been hurt in the chapel that morning. He had been hurt by one of his own men. He had been left on the floor. He was bleeding from the same place on his neck the man I had seen in October had been bleeding. He was alive, but he was no longer in the house. He was no longer in the story. Dante came down at 7. He came into the kitchen, he looked at the bread, he looked at the lemon curd, he sat, he did not speak. Gattina, he said. Sir Dante, he said. Dante, tomorrow I am going to do a thing. I am going to take the man who sent the Russian, and I am going to bring him here. I am going to make him tell me every name he has ever known. You will not be in this kitchen when he is here. You will be upstairs. You will be with Lorenzo. Lorenzo will protect you or Lorenzo will die. I did not argue. You will not be hurt. I know. I am telling you because I will not have you hearing things through walls. I am telling you because you are no longer furniture. I nodded. That woman, the woman who is doing this, she does not want to kill me. She wants to kill the thing I love. She wants to kill the kitchen. I went cold. I went cold because I understood that he had just said, in a kitchen in October of his dead mother's house. With the lemon curd in the fridge and the beeswax on the silver and the chapel behind the cypress, that he loved the kitchen. That he loved me. That he loved the woman who was making the curd. That he loved the woman who had stood at the door of the chapel and said careful to a man with a gun. I went cold and then I went warm and then I went cold again. He said, I am going to make this woman lose her network. I am going to take her men. I am going to dismantle the only thing she has left. She will not be able to come back from this. Her daughter's grave, the things she has, I am going to take them. I said, Dante, yes. Stop, he looked at me. Do not dismantle her daughter's grave. His face changed. The face I had been seeing for 41 days. The face of a man who decided things. The face of a man who had been deciding things since he was a boy. His face changed into the face of a man who had just heard a sound he did not know he could still recognize. Do not kill her daughter. She lost her daughter. She lost her daughter the same night I lost mine. A silence came over the kitchen that was not the silence of men who were pretending to be still. It was the silence of a man who had just been told his own brutal story back to him by a woman who had not heard his story before. He said, I will not touch the daughter. He stood. He walked out. I sat in the kitchen with my hands on my stomach. I sat there a long time. I did not know what I had done. I had said the only true thing I knew, that the woman had lost her daughter. I had said it because it was true. I had not said it because I was brave. I had said it because I was afraid. I sat there until I got cold. Then I made the tart. Then I went upstairs. The house was quiet. The kitchen was quiet. The chapel was quiet. Everything was waiting. War has fully arrived. Cost, Marco nearly lost. Why her expanded. She speaks to the war lady directly, defends. Almost 3. Moment in kitchen, the kiss sense. CTA precursor not yet. Comedy relief used minimally. Oscars, Madonna, twice carrying warmth plus his unrequited love plus bread. There is a room at the back of this house I had not been in. It is not a guest room. It is not a servant room. It is the room where Dante's mother kept a prie-dieu, and a small statue of Saint Rita, and a rosary of dark wood. And a piece of paper that had been folded and folded again until it was the size of a thumbnail. The paper smelled of sandalwood. I had not seen it. I had not been told about it. I had been upstairs on Tuesday night exactly 1 week after Marco had been removed, when I heard the house go quiet in a way I had not heard before. The quiet was not the quiet of men who were pretending to be still. It was the quiet of a house that had been emptied from the inside. Lorenzo came. He was carrying a pistol. He had a face I had not seen. He had a face of a man who had been told to lie, which is to say, a face of a man who had been told to do something and could not do it well. "Elena," he said. "Come with me." I went. He took me down the back stairs. He took me past the chapel door, which was now standing open, and into a part of the house I had never been in. There was a room. The room was dark. The room smelled of beeswax and cologne, and the particular kind of cold that is not a temperature but a feeling. In the room there was a chair. In the chair there was a man. I did not recognize the man at first because the man was hooded, and his hands were tied behind his back with a leather belt. Lorenzo tied the hood. Lorenzo untied his hands. Lorenzo set a glass of water in front of him. Lorenzo said, "He is not to be touched." The boss said not. The boss said he is to be talked to, he is to be made to talk. The boss will be here in 2 hours. Lorenzo left me in the room. I sat across from the hooded man. The hood was dark green, like the color of cypress leaves. I could see the line of his jaw through the hood. He was older than me. He was younger than Dante. He had the particular posture of a man who has been in this position before and knows what it means. "I know you," he said. "You are the one in the file." I did not say. He laughed. He laughed the way men laugh when they are in a position they have been in before, which is to say he laughed because the alternative was something worse. "Dante cut my sister off," he said. "Dante took her network. Dante took her men. Dante did this because you were in his house." I said, "I do not know your sister. You do not need to know her. You are the reason." I did not say anything. I had been told this story. I had been told this story by Oscar. I had been told that on March 14, 13 years before, a boy had come to this house and shot himself in the chest because he had been married to a woman Dante had loved. I had been told that she had lost her daughter that night. I had been told that she had been trying to kill Dante ever since. I had not been told that she had a brother. "What do you want from me?" I said. "I want you to live," he said. "I want you to live because she wants you dead. I want her to have the one thing she wants most and not get it. I want her to lose. The only thing I want is for her to lose." I sat there. I did not speak for a long time. Then I said, "If I am alive, she does not lose. If I am alive, she has someone to come back for. If I am dead, she has nothing left to come back for." The hooded man looked at me. He could not see my face because his hood was over his face, but he could see my hands. He could see the way my hands were on my stomach. "You are pregnant," he said. "Yes." "I will not touch you," he said. "I will not touch the child. I am here because she sent me. I am here because I was her brother, and I have been doing what she has asked me to do for 13 years. I am here because on March 14, the girl I never got to know, my niece, was lost." He stopped talking. He had the face of a man who had stopped talking. "Why are you here now?" I said. "Why has she sent you now?" "Because," he said, "because Dante has taken her last network. He has taken her last ally. He has taken her last friend. He has done this through Marco." Marco was her son. I went cold. Marco was not his cousin. Marco was hers. She raised him. He was the boy the household. He stopped himself. I understood. Marco isn't Dante's cousin. No. Marco is her son. Marco is the one who survived. Marco is the one who has been raised to look like Dante's ally. Marco is the one who has been feeding her information for 7 years. Marco was to be her weapon. Marco was to be inside the kitchen. Marco was to be the knife. I sat in the chair. I sat in the chair because I had been told not to stand. I sat in the chair because I was 8 months pregnant. I sat in the chair because the man in front of me had just told me that the man who had been the most loyal soldier in this house had been the son of the woman who was trying to kill the man I had been cooking for. Marco was to take you from the kitchen on Sunday. Marco was to deliver you to her. Marco was to make sure no one in this house saw. Marco was to bring you to her house on the eastern lake. Marco was to leave you there. I sat very still. You are in this room because she sent me to take you from the kitchen on Sunday. I am here instead. Why? I said. Why are you here instead? Because the Russian told her what you said. The Russian told her you said careful. She sent me instead. She sent me to look at you. She sent me to find out what you are. He had not untied the hood. He had not taken his hands from behind his back. He had been sitting in a chair with his hands behind his back for 2 hours, and he had been drinking water from a glass that Lorenzo had set in front of him. He had not taken a single drop. I said, "What did you find out?" "That you are not the one she should be killing," he said. "That you are the one she should be leaving alone." He put his hand out across the table. He did not touch me. He lifted one of the leather ties from his wrist. He set it on the table between us. "Take this," he said. "Put it in your pocket. Show the boss. Tell him I gave it to you. Tell him I did not touch you. Tell him Marco is not his cousin. Tell him." He stopped talking. He looked at his hands, which were still tied behind his back. "Tell him I will not come back to this house." I took the tie. He put his hands behind his back again. He did not take the hood off. He did not stand. I left the room. Lorenzo was at the back stairs. He had a face I had not seen. He had a face I would not see again. "Lorenzo," I said, "is the boss back yet?" "No, signora. I need to wait." I sat on the back stairs. I sat on the stairs in October with a leather tie in my pocket and a child inside me and a man in a hood in the dark room behind me. I sat on the stairs and I waited for Dante. I did not know how long I waited. I knew that when he came up the stairs, he was not the man who had been in this house before. He was not the man who had carried me to bed on the night the pipe burst. He was a man who had been told that the boy he had thought was his cousin was the son of the woman who had been trying to kill him for 13 years. He came up the stairs. He looked at me. He looked at the leather tie in my hand. I said, "Marco is not your cousin." "I know," he said. He had always known. He had known from before I was in this house. He had known from the night the boy had been brought to the door. He had raised Marco as a cousin. He had loved Marco. He had not let Marco touch the kitchen towel. He had not let Marco touch the curd. He had not let Marco touch me. "He was inside the kitchen," I said. He was supposed to take you," he said. "He did not." "He did because I told him that if he took you, I would know." "Why didn't he do it?" I said. Dante held the leather tie in his hands. He looked at it. He did not look at me. "Because," he said. "Because of the bread, Gattina." He did not explain. He did not explain to me. He explained, perhaps, only to Marco, who was not in this room, who was not in this story anymore. Who was somewhere on a road above the lake in October with the face of a man who had been raised to kill the only man he had ever been allowed to love. He lifted my chin. He did not kiss me. He lifted my chin and he looked at my face and he said, very quietly, very carefully, the way a man says a thing he has been waiting months to say, he said, "I will not lose you." He did not kiss me. He let go of my chin. He took the leather tie from my hand. He set it on the table. He walked into the dark room. He closed the door. I sat on the back stairs. I did not go into the kitchen. I sat on the back stairs because the kitchen was no longer safe. Gattina uses, for why her echoed. Because of the bread, she made bread that changed Marco's mind. Traitor revealed, Marco is the war lady's son. Almost for, he lifts her chin, doesn't kiss. Slow mystery, Marco's identity revealed. I am going to write down now the thing I did not understand for a long time after that night, which is this. I had been told that on March 14, a boy had come to this house with a pistol. I had been told that he had shot himself because his wife had been loved by Dante. I had been told that she had lost her daughter. I had been told that Marco was her son. I had been told all of this. I had been told all of this by Oscar, by Lorenzo, by Dante, by the man in the hooded chair. I had been told all of this, and yet I had not understood it, because understanding a thing and knowing a thing are not the same thing. Knowing a thing is teeth. Understanding a thing is letting the teeth close. The teeth closed the morning Dante came down to the kitchen and said we go to the Eastern Lake. I said we go to the Eastern Lake. I cannot do this alone, he said. I cannot do this alone without you. I did not say. I did not understand what he meant. I had never been to the Eastern Lake. I had been a girl in Gallaret, a woman in a hospice, a maid in this house. I had been furniture. I had been bread. I said, I cannot fight. You do not need to fight. You need to be there when I find her. I need you there. I cannot tell you why. I cannot explain to you the thing I cannot explain to Lorenzo, the thing I cannot explain to Oscar, the thing I cannot explain to the chair in the back room I sat in last night. I can only tell you that I need you there because of the bread. We went. I sat in the back of the car. Lorenzo drove. The car was black. The car smelled of beeswax. Lorenzo did not speak. All the way to the Eastern Lake, Lorenzo did not speak. His hands on the wheel were steady. His face was the face of a man who has been told to do a thing and is doing it. The Eastern Lake was different. The Eastern Lake was the lake I had been told about in story, the lake where men come and go and never come back. The lake where the houses look the same from the outside and different from the inside. The houses on the Eastern Lake did not smell of beeswax. They smelled of cedar and old fish and the particular kind of cold that comes off water in November. We pulled up at a gate. The gate was made of iron. The gate had a knocker shaped like a hand. I said, I have seen a knocker like that. My mother bought it from the same blacksmith in Genoa, Dante said. I didn't know. He knew now. He knew the man he had been fighting was using his mother's knocker. He knew this because the woman had loved his mother. The woman had loved his mother when they were all girls. The woman had lost the mother on March 14, when the mother had bled out in this kitchen, and the son had bled out in the back bathroom of this house. We went inside. There was a woman at the top of the stairs. She was not young. She was not old. She had the face of a woman who has been planning a thing for 13 years. She wore a black coat. She had a pistol in her hand. She looked at Dante. She looked at me. She said, "This is her." "Yes," Dante said. "This is the one you are hiding." "Yes, this is the one your brother died loving." Dante did not say anything. "This is the one your mother bled for." Dante did not say. "This is the one I have been trying to kill." "Yes," she said, "I am not going to kill her." "No," Dante said, "I am going to kill you. Then you will not see her again." She looked at him. "You cannot promise me that." "I can. You want me dead. You can have me. I will come into this house in 3 hours by myself. I will not bring Lorenzo. I will not bring anyone. I will bring a pistol. I will use it on myself. I will leave my coat on the floor." "Dante," I said. He did not look at me. "You will leave her alone," the woman said. "Yes, you will release every name in every ledger you have ever kept. Yes, you will let her walk out of this house. Yes," she looked at the pistol in her hand. "I am not going to do this," she said. "I am not going to kill you. I am not going to give her a victory. I am not going to give her daughter a victory." "Aurora," Dante said. The daughter's name was Aurora. I had not known this. "Aurora is in this house. I will not touch her." "She is not in this house," the woman said. "She has been in Switzerland for 7 years. She does not know who her mother is. She does not know who her father is. She does not know you." Dante did not say. "You did not know she was alive." "I have always known she was alive. I have known her address. I have known her school. I have known her favorite color. I have known her favorite color since she was 6. "What is her favorite color?" the woman said. She had the face of a woman who was about to lower a pistol. "Yellow," Dante said. "Yellow, the same yellow as her mother's wedding dress." The woman set down the pistol. She did not say anything for a long time. She said, "If you had ever touched me, I would have known. There is no way I would not have known, but you never touched me. You never said a word. You only ever looked at me in a way that could not have been a lie." "Yes," Dante said. "I am going to lose this, aren't I?" she said. "I am going to lose the war that I have been running for 13 years. I am going to lose Marco. I am going to lose my network. I am going to lose the only thing I have ever wanted, which was to look at your face and know that someone else had won. Yes, Dante said. Take her, the woman said. Take her out of my house. I left the house on the eastern lake. I did not say anything on the drive back. I did not say anything on the drive back, because I had been pulled into a story I had not known I was in. I had been told by his own mother, by his own brother's wife, by his own brother's son, that I was the thing he had been pretending he did not love. I had been told I was the third woman he had loved that night: Marie, his mother; Tommaso, his brother; me. I had been told I was the woman who had been loved by a man who had not touched the woman he had been accused of loving. I sat in the back of the car. I did not speak for 20 minutes. Then I said, Dante, yes, does the bread matter? He said, yes. Why? He said, because the bread made Marco love me, because the bread made Marco not take you. Because you said careful to a man on stairs with a broken jar, and you said careful to a man in a chapel with a pistol. And you said careful to me every morning at 5 when you set the lemons on the aga, and you did not know I was watching. I sat there. Gattina, he said. He had called me that word for 41 days. He had called me Gattina on the stairs, in the breakfast room, in the car, in the chapel, in the back room. He had called me Gattina the way a man calls a thing he has been hiding. He said it now in a way I had not heard before. He said it in the way men in this house say yes. Marco, he said, is alive. I am not going to send someone to find him. He is on the road. He has a broken arm. He has not slept. He is not going to come to this house again. I will let him go. I said, yes. He said, you have to decide, Gattina. Decide what? Whether you want to be in this house, whether you want the bread, whether you want the lemon. Whether you want to be furniture for the rest of your life. Whether you want me to be a man who carries you to bed when the pipe bursts and does not say a word about it. I did not say anything. I did not say anything because the question was the question I had been asked on October 1, when I had first stood in the kitchen. Then I said, I am not going anywhere, Dante. I said it because it was the only true thing I knew. Gattina uses 4 parallels. Why her expanded? Because of the bread. Slow mystery partly resolved. Marisla/Aurora's photo shown. Final villain steps into full view but loses her weapon. She chooses not to fire. War is approaching, but the war is over without firing. Marco came back on a Sunday in November. He came at 4 in the afternoon. He came to the front gate, not the back gate. He came alone. He had a broken arm. He had a coat that had been washed but was still wet. He had a face I had not seen on a boy's face before, a face of a man who had done a thing and undone it, and was not yet ready to be seen. Dante was not in the house. Lorenzo was not in the house. Oscar was not in the house. I was the only one in the kitchen. I was kneading bread. He stood in the doorway. He had been through a door that said staff and deliveries only. He had been through a part of the house I had not seen him come through before. He had been in the part of the house where Dante kept the personnel files. He had been to see the file. He had been to see me. He did not enter the kitchen. Elena, he said. Marco, I have come to apologize. You do not need to apologize to me. I do. I have come to apologize to you because of the thing I did not do. He paused. I have come to tell you that I am not going to take your child. I did not say anything. I have come to tell you that the man who sent me is not going to give me a second chance. I have come to tell you that I am going to be alone. I set the bread in the bowl. I set the bowl aside. I set down the knife. Marco, yes, come in. He did not come in. He stood in the doorway. He had a particular posture I had not seen on him before. He had the posture of a man whose mother had told him he was a weapon, and who had decided he was not a weapon, and was now sitting in a doorway uncertain what he was. Dante has asked me to come in, he said. Dante has told me I am to be allowed back in this house for 20 minutes. Dante has told me I am to be allowed to apologize in person. He has not told me I am to be forgiven. He has not told me there is a way back. I said, come in, sit down. He came in. He sat in the wooden chair by the aga. He sat in the same chair Oscar had sat in on the morning he had told me about Dante and March 14 and the brother. I set a glass of water in front of him. I set the bread in front of him. He ate. He did not eat well. He did not eat the way a man eats when he is starving. He ate the way a man eats when he is trying to apologize through the bread. He ate 3 slices. He set the 3rd slice down. I am going to leave again, he said. I am not going to come back. I am going to take my mother. He stopped talking. I am going to take Marisla to Switzerland. I am going to find Aurora. I am going to tell her who her mother is. Aurora, I said. What does she look like? She is yellow, he said. She is everything yellow. She looks like the dress. She looks like the ribbon on her mother's wedding dress. She has been raised in a Swiss boarding school where no one knows what color yellow means. I said, You are not a weapon, Marco. He looked up at me. He had not been called anything other than a soldier or her son for weeks. He had not been called a person. He had not been called a man. He had been called ally, cousin, weapon, traitor, brother, son. He had not been called himself. He was the 7th person in this house who had been called less than what he was. You are my brother's son, I said. You are a boy who was raised in a kitchen by a man who taught you how to fold napkins and how to fold silver. I did not know this. I did not know what Dante had taught Marco. I knew only what I had seen. You are my brother's son because your mother loved my husband. I did not know what I was saying. I was not his brother. He was not mine. He was the son of the woman who had been fighting Dante. He was the son of Marisla. He was the man who had been a cousin of Dante for 7 years. I said it anyway because it was true. He set down the bread. He stood. He did not come closer. He did not hug me. He had been raised in a house where men do not hug women who are not theirs. He walked to the door. He stopped. Tell the boss, he said. Tell the boss Marco says goodbye. I said, I will. He walked out. I stood in the kitchen. The bread sat in the bowl. The aga was warm. The lemon curd was in the fridge. The beeswax polish was in the cupboard. Dante walked in. He had been in the chapel. He had been at the back of the house. He had been behind the cypress. He had been watching Marco come up the road. He had been letting Marco apologize without being present. He looked at me. He is gone, I said. Yes. He is not a weapon. No. He never was. He is your nephew. He was, he is still, he is not coming back. I picked up the bowl. I picked up the bread. I set the bread on the aga. I set the bowl on the counter. He walked to me. He stood in front of me. He looked at me, the way he had looked at me on the morning of the broken jar. But differently now, with a particular weight that was the weight of a man who had decided months before to love a woman he had been given permission to love. He said very quietly, Gatina. He did not say yes. He did not say my love. He did not say I am yours. He said the word he had been calling me since October. He said it the way a man says it after he has been allowed to stop saying it. Yes, I said. He kissed me. He had not kissed me on the stairs. He had not kissed me in the chapel. He had not kissed me in the back room. He had not kissed me in the car. He had kissed me now in the kitchen, with the bread on the aga and the lemon curd in the fridge, and the baby awake inside me, and the war over. He kissed me the way a man kisses a woman he has been waiting to kiss since October. He kissed me the way he kissed her in the kitchen, where his mother had died, where his brother had bled, where the woman he had been allowed to love had stood for 41 days and told him not to dismantle a daughter's grave. He kissed me, and then he did not kiss me, and then he kissed me again because he had learned in October that the right thing to do is sometimes more than one thing. When he let go, he said, "It is over, Gatina." I set down the wooden spoon. I said, "It is over." I leaned against him. I leaned against the shoulder that was not in the shape of a man deciding, and not in the shape of a man who had decided, but in the shape of a man who had stopped deciding. The shoulder was a shoulder. He held me. He held me the way a man holds a woman he has been holding in his mind for 41 days. He held me until the kitchen smelled only of bread and lemon and beeswax and the cold coming off the November lake. He held me until I forgot the names. It was over. Gatina, 5 uses kissed. First kiss paid off in war's end. Comic relief returns. Oscar eats bread. War's cost, it is over. The chapter ends on quiet physical. The morning after the war, I woke up in a room I had not been in before. The room was on the second floor of the east wing. The room had a window that looked out over the lake. The room had a small bed and a small desk and a single chair and a row of hooks on the wall for my mother's dress. The room smelled of beeswax and lemon and the cold coming off the lake, the way the kitchen smelled, the way the bread smelled. Oscar was sitting on the chair. He had a notebook in his lap. The notebook was titled Plan B. He had been weighing himself on Tuesdays. He had been weighing himself for 14 years. He had not lost the weight. He had not gained the weight. The number had been the same number for 14 years. Oscar, I said. Elena, he said. He stood up. He set down the notebook. He walked to the door. He did not cry. He was not able to cry in this house anymore. He had used up his tears in October. He had tears for the morning the pipe had burst. He had tears for the morning he had told me about March 14. He had tears for Marco. He had tears for Maria. I am leaving, he said. Oscar, I am not leaving the house, he said. I am leaving the staff wing. I am moving into Maria's wing. I sat up. She is going to say yes, he said. Oscar, she is going to say yes because the boss has asked her to say yes. The boss has asked her because the boss does not want her to live in the staff wing anymore. The boss has decided that I am to be married to Maria. He looked at me. The boss has decided that I am not to weigh myself on Tuesdays anymore. I laughed. I had not laughed in this house. I had not laughed since October. I laughed because Oscar had been weighing himself on Tuesdays for 14 years. I laughed because he had a notebook titled Plan B. I laughed because he had been bringing Maria coffee at 11 a.m. every morning, with the same undelivered promise on his face. I laughed because the war was over, and a man who had been weighing himself on Tuesdays was being told by the boss to stop weighing himself on Tuesdays. Oscar, I said. Madonna, he laughed. He laughed the way men laugh when they have been given permission to laugh for the first time in 14 years. He said, Elena, you have a visitor. He stepped out of the way of the door. Maria was in the hallway. She had the face of a woman who had refused a man for 19 years. She had a face of a woman who was going to marry that man in November. She had a small box in her hand. The box had a key in it. The boss, Maria said, the boss has asked that I give you this. I took the key. The key was small. The key was brass. The key was for the door at the end of the second-floor hall, the door that I had been told, on the first morning I had worked here, was never opened. The door to Madame Salvator's room. The door to the room where Dante's mother had kept a prie-dieu, and a small statue, and a rosary of dark wood. The boss said, Maria said, the boss said you are not to keep the key because he has decided you are not furniture. The boss said you are to keep the key because he has decided the room is yours. I held the key. I went up the stairs. I went past the chapel door, which was now standing open and would be standing open every day. I went past the kitchen, where the bread was rising on the aga. I went past the bedroom Lorenzo had been sleeping in, and the bedroom Oscar had been sleeping in, and the bedroom where Marco had been staying when he was still in the house. I went to the end of the second-floor hall. I put the key in the lock. The lock made a small, honest click. I opened the door. The room smelled of beeswax and sandalwood and old paper, and the cold coming off the lake. The room had a small bed and a small desk and a chair that I had not seen before and a window that looked out over the cypress. The window was open. The cypress smelled of resin. In the room was a prie-dieu. On the prie-dieu was the rosary of dark wood Oscar had given me. On the prie-dieu was a small statue of Saint Rita. On the prie-dieu was the photograph of Tommaso. Beside the photograph on the floor was a pair of baby shoes. I sat down on the prie-dieu. I held the rosary in my hands. I did not cry. I cried because the war was over, and because the shoes were on the floor, and because the rosary was in my hands, and because the smell of the room was the smell of a woman who had died on March 14. I cried for the grandmother. I cried for my mother. I cried for the man who had kissed me in the kitchen. I cried for Oscar, who had been weighing himself on Tuesdays for 14 years. I cried for Marco, who was now in Switzerland with Marisla, who had not been his mother. I cried for the baby, who was now 4 weeks old, who was asleep in the room down the hall, in the crib Dante had ordered from Bologna. I cried because I had not been furniture. I cried because Dante had given me a key. I cried because the key meant, in this house, what a ring meant in any other house, stay. A hand touched my shoulder. I did not turn around, I knew his hands. I knew them from the broken jar on the stairs. I knew them from the chamomile in the fever. I knew them from the leather tie in the back room. I knew them from the kiss in the kitchen. He said, Gattina. He did not say little cat. He did not say key. He did not say Mrs. Salvator. He said my word. He said the word he had been saying since October. Gattina, he said, would you like to stay? He said it as a question, not a statement. He had not asked me a question since October. He had been deciding things. He had been reporting weather. He had been telling me what was going to happen. Now he was asking me. Yes, I said, forever, yes, you will not leave. No, you will not run. No, he kissed the top of my head. He sat down on the floor beside the prie-dieu. He looked at the photograph of Tommaso. He did not say anything. He did not need to. I held the rosary in my hands, and I sat on the prie-dieu, and I was going to stay in this room with the beeswax, and the sandalwood, and the baby shoes. I held the rosary in my hands, and I held the hands of a man I had been running from since October. I had not been running. I had been learning to stop. Gattina count, 5 warming. Nickname evolution complete now tender. Proposal paid, the key not a ring. Comedy relief, Oscar's plan B resolved, he stops weighing himself. Family callback, shoes plus rosary plus perfume sensory motif, final scene in quiet ordinariness. The baby is named Lucia. We named her on a Sunday in March 14. She was 6 weeks old. We had waited for the day because the day was the day we had not been able to pretend it was not. Dante held her on the prie-dieu. He held her in front of the photograph of Tommaso. He did not say anything. I sat on the prie-dieu beside him. I had lemon curd on my hands. I had been making lemon curd. I had been making lemon curd because it was a Tuesday. I had been making lemon curd because Oscar had stopped weighing himself on Tuesdays, and because Maria had been bringing him coffee in the staff dining room, and because Oscar had not weighed himself. Since the war, I had lemon curd on my hands because I had been cooking. I had been cooking because I had been alive. Lorenzo came into the room. He had a piece of paper. He set the piece of paper on the prie-dieu. He walked out. He did not speak. Lorenzo had stopped speaking in this house on the morning of the war. Lorenzo had stopped speaking because Lorenzo had been the one who had driven me to the Eastern Lake, and Lorenzo had been the one who had let Marco be raised in this house for 7 years. And Lorenzo had decided to let his silence be the only apology that mattered. I read the paper. It was from Marco, it was from Switzerland, it was a single line, Aurora is wearing yellow. I handed the paper to Dante. He read it. He set it down on the prie-dieu beside the photograph. He did not say anything. He held the baby. He held her in his arms. He held her in front of the photograph. He held her the way a man holds a child when he has been told he will not have children and has had a child. She turned her head. She looked at me. She did not see me. She could not see me. She was 6 weeks old. She turned her head because she heard my voice. She turned because I was humming the song my grandmother had hummed in Gallaret, the song my mother had hummed in the hospice, the song I had hummed in October when I had been making bread in a strange kitchen, for a man I had not yet been allowed to love. The song was a song about lemons. It was a song my grandmother had learned from her grandmother. It was a song that went, lemon on the table, lemon in the hand, lemon for the woman, lemon for the man. Lemon for the baby, lemon for the cat. Little cat, I said to Lucia. I had been calling her that since she was born. I had been calling her Gattina since the first morning in October when the aga had been warm, and the lemon had been on the counter, and the boss had come down the stairs, and had said you smell like a kitchen. Dante looked at me. He said very quietly, she has your hands. I looked at her hands. They were small. They were the hands of a baby. They were the hands of a child who would grow up in this house, who would learn the lemon song, who would learn to fold napkins, who would learn to weigh melons on her hands, who would one day be allowed to walk through the chapel door and stand in the cypress with the wind off the lake coming through her hair. She has your eyes, I said. Yes. She has your shoulders. No, she has your shoulders. He did not look at me. He said it the way he said yes when the bread was the bread I had made. I held the rosary in one hand. I held the baby in the other. I said, Dante. Yes, Gattina. It was not the same Gattina he had said in October. The October Gattina was a key. The October Gattina was a paperweight. The October Gattina was the word a man uses for a cologne he has worn every day for 20 years. The March Gattina was the word a man uses for the woman he has been trying to call since he was a boy, and whose name he did not know until she was dying in his arms, and he had asked Oscar to find her. Mother. The March Gattina was stay. I said, the lemon curd. Yes, it is ready. We will eat it. Together, always. He set the baby down in the crib. He set her down the way a man sets down a piece of bread he has been kneading in his hands. He set her down. He walked to the door. He did not look at me. I stood in the room with the rosary in my hand, and the lemon on the table and the baby in the crib, and the smell of beeswax, and the smell of sandalwood, and the smell of cold lake coming through the cypress. I had been in this house for 142 days. I had been furniture. I had been bread. I had been lemon curd. I had been lemon curd on the hands of a man I had been carrying a child for in October. I had been the woman at the chapel door. I had been the woman in the back room. I had been the woman at the eastern lake. I had been the woman in the kitchen when the war was over. I had been the woman who had cried in a room with a prie-dieu. I had been Alina. I walked down the stairs. I went into the kitchen. The aga was warm. Oscar was at the counter with his notebook. He had been writing in Plan B for the first time in 14 years. He had written the word yes in capital letters in the middle of the page. He looked up. Elena, he said. Oscar, I said. Madonna. He laughed. He laughed the way he had laughed in November. He laughed the way he had laughed because the war was over, and because the man who had been weighing himself on Tuesdays had stopped weighing himself on Tuesdays. I set out the lemon curd. I set out the bread. I set out the silver. I set out the small wooden spoon. I set out the photograph of Tommaso. The kitchen smelled of lemon and beeswax and cold lake and bread. The kitchen smelled like a kitchen. The kitchen smelled like the kitchen of a woman who had been allowed to stay. I went to the door. I stood at the door of the kitchen, the way I had stood on the first morning in October. I stood at the door. I held the wooden spoon in my hand. I held the wooden spoon the way a woman holds a thing she has been told she is allowed to keep. I said, very quietly, careful. I said it to no one. I said it to the kitchen. I said it to the man who had carried me to bed and kissed the top of my head and given me the key. I said it to the woman who had lost her daughter. I said it to the brother who had died. I said it to the grandmother who had taught me to fold napkins and to weigh bread. I said it to the baby who was asleep upstairs. I said it because the word was the only word I knew. I said it because the word was the word I had been saying to men in this house since October. I said it because the word had stopped being teeth and had become something else. I said it because careful was also the word for stay. The kitchen smelled of lemon. The bread was on the aga. The chapel door was open. Oscar was weighing himself in his heart. Maria was coming at 11 with coffee. Lorenzo was driving the car down the lake road. Marco was in Switzerland with a daughter in yellow. Tommaso was in his frame. Madame Salvator was in her rosary, and I was standing at the door of a kitchen I had been allowed to keep. Comment below, when Dante lifted Alina's chin in Chapter 8 and did not kiss her, what was he protecting her from? What was he protecting you from? Comment Part 2 below if you want to see what happens next. End of story.